This is the brand new BMW R18, and it's one of the coolest throwback motorcycles to come out of Germany. And it's unlike any cruiser motorcycle that you guys have ever seen, but I got a problem with it. So hang on, I'll tell you guys all about it. Now, the R18 is a modern motorcycle marvel with engineering stuff that I've not seen on any cruiser bike or any bike anywhere. But what might surprise you about this bike is where they came up with the concept of it, and it's actually a throwback from the BMW R5 back in the 1930s. And unlike Pontiac and Dodge, when BMW does a throwback, it actually kind of resembles the vehicle that they're talking about. I'm still pissed off at Pontiac about the GTO. And you can see the original R5 in this bike in these characteristics. The teardrop tank, the black with white pinstripes, the legendary boxer motor, the fishtail exhaust, the triangle looking frame of the whole body. But the problem is, if you wanted to buy a BMW R5, chances are it's gonna cost you, $30,000 to $50,000 to buy a nice one. Getting parts for it's gonna be tough. But if you like the way it looks, which you should because it's an amazing looking bike, this is a much better option. Because this has all the same style, all the same class, all the same prestige, but modern day technology. It's gonna be more reliable, it's got a warranty on it, and it's gonna have a whole lot more power. This is a monster 1.8 liter boxer engine, which means that these are some of the biggest jugs on a motorcycle I've ever seen, making 91 horsepower and 114 pounds of torque. Now, the R18 motor is a completely new redesigned motor. They didn't just grab the engine out of the BMW GS and throw it in here and put some chrome on top of it. And it's a very cool design where the camshafts are over the crank, which is why the push rods are clearly visible from the top of the engine right here. Now, another interesting way how this thing differs from the 1250 boxer engine is this engine has an additional main bearing. So instead of it having 2 main bearings, this one has 3 main bearings, and that's done for extra durability. Now, because this is an air-cooled motor, well, technically it's an air and oil-cooled engine because it's got a little oil cooler down there. The BMW engineers did something really cool with the head where actually they have an oil passageway that goes around the exhaust valve to keep it cool. Now, if you look hard enough and if you look at enough BMWs, every once in a while you'll see a part where you're like, that's a car part. They pulled that right off a car. Now, I don't know if they got this off a car, but most motorcycles have a multi-disc clutch pack. They're about this big and about this thick with a bunch of different discs and clutches. This bike has one ginormous dry clutch inside of it, almost the size of what you would see in a car. I wouldn't doubt it if this actually was from a car, because that would make sense. And what that means to the rider is, chances are you're never gonna have to replace that clutch. So the power goes from the engine, through the big dry clutch, and from the clutch, the power goes through a 6-speed gearbox, into the exposed nickel-plated drive shaft, into a push drive system inside the final drive, which puts the power to the ground. Now, one of the things I really love about this bike is the level of fit and finish, and just the overall quality of this machine is really next level. From the bracket that holds the seat down to the key fob that mimics the teardrop gas tank of the bike, it's just a beautiful machine that you kind of miss in a lot of modern day motorcycles where everything is covered up with electronics and plastic covers, which it's just cheaper and easier to make a bike that way. But here you can tell that the engineers and the designers work together just to make this thing a piece of artwork. But with all this beauty, they did not forget the function because, of course, this is a German machine. And that's why this bike has cool features such as keyless run, which means you don't have to have the key in the bike to where you just have it in your pocket, heated grips, and dynamic cruise control, which is just like new modern cars where it's got a sensor in there that the cruise control will get faster or slow down depending on the car in front of you. You can set that up to how much distance you want it to be apart. It's actually really cool. However, it did not come as a standard option, or I don't think even at all, in the first edition R18s, which is what this one is. But I'm told that for like $350, I can get a new left control cover that I can add the steering to it, which I kind of want to do. Now, they also know that people like to make their bikes their own and like to change it up and like to have options. So they have multiple different seat options, including a really cool looking bobber option, which I bought 2 of these and I'm gonna keep one of them because I really do like them. You can also get bigger handlebars and change the exhaust out. It's just, because this is a brand new bike, there's not as many options out there as there would be for a Harley Davidson, but I think there's enough to kind of hit most people's preferences. Now, most modern bikes have different driving modes, and this is no exception. This has 3 different driving modes, but I feel like they kind of missed the mark, and it was kind of goofy and kind of corny the way they wanted to really hit their demographic of who's gonna buy this bike. So the modes are rain and then rock and roll, which is also kind of confusing because, okay, rain is gonna be limited throttle response, and that's for when you're in the rain. I guess rock is when you wanna go real fast, and then roll is when you wanna go slow, or is rock when you wanna drive on rocks and off-road and sand, and then roll is when you wanna roll on the highway and go really fast. It's not as clear as, A, B, or C mode, or range, street, and track mode. I also don't think that they're convincing anyone to not buy another bike and be like, rock and roll, I'm gonna buy that bike. It just doesn't make, I don't know what they're going for with that one. Maybe it's a little Easter egg that they hid in there, but it's pretty obvious. I can just imagine some like rock and roll guy walking into like a dealership and being like, I wanna buy a Harley Davidson, and then he's like, wait a second, that bike says rock and roll in it? This bike gets me. BMW gets me, I'm buying a Beamer. I just don't see that happening. Now the funny thing about this motorcycle is it's very clearly marketed from BMW as their first cruiser bike. We didn't forget, I don't know, maybe they wanted to forget, but I kind of like it, but the BMW R1150C, the James Bond bike. How you can't forget about that bike. That's your first cruiser bike. Let's not fool ourselves. Also, if this is your first cruiser bike, this is like a throwback to a 1936 motorcycle. Wouldn't that have been your first cruiser bike? So the big question on a lot of people's minds is, who is this bike really made for? Is BMW really making bikes to compete with Harley Davidson, while Harley Davidson is making adventure bikes to compete with BMW? In terms of what BMW's doing, what I mean by that is I don't think BMW is trying to copy or mimic Harley Davidson to build a better cruiser motorcycle. Because if they were gonna do that, never in a million years would they have used the Boxer engine. Let me explain why. Because we all know that Harley guys like forward controls, or highway bars, and putting your feet or legs on the jugs, that's just not gonna do it. And BMW designed, they configured this motor specifically for this bike, which means that they could have used or designed whatever motor they wanted to. They had no limitations of what engine they were gonna put in their first cruiser bike. And BMW does not just use Boxer engines. They've got 6 cylinders, they got 4 cylinders, they got single cylinder, they got tons of different engines that they could have used, or they could have designed whatever they wanted to. It's BMW. This bike was designed for BMW guys, for people who want a modern day spin on an old German design, and for someone who just loves the feel of a Boxer engine. And the way when you fire it up and you rev it up, the bike kind of twists to the side, you know what I mean? It's a very unique, it's very different. Now this would be a great time to do a test drive, but before we do a test drive, before we jump on the bike and I'll show you how it rides and you're gonna get to hear it, let me talk about the one big problem I have with this motorcycle. I guess it's not that big. It's weird. All right, the keys here, I try to start it, the bike won't turn on. I found out that you have to have the kickstand up to start the bike. And I guess they do it as some type of safety feature. I'm already a guy riding motorcycles. I don't want any more safety in my experience in my life. Maybe they did that for the purpose of oil, but it's weird. I don't like it. I wish I could just, on the kickstand, fire the bike up, let it warm up for a second. Let's go take this thing for a spin. You're gonna love how this thing sounds. This is a really, put that giant kickstand up, press the start button. There's something very unique and special about the feeling of a Boxer engine, and BMW does it so well. All right guys, something I forgot to mention about this motorcycle back when we were inside. It's got one of the coolest features. Check it out. Put the bike in neutral, flip that thing down. You see that? Reverse. Press the start button just like a Goldwing would. How you like that? Flip it back up. Now everything's normal. That's a pretty awesome feature, and a lot of bikes just don't have it or even have the option for that. Before I show you more about this bike, let's do the words of wisdom real quick. 2 Thessalonians 3:3. But the Lord is faithful, and he will strengthen and protect you from the evil one. Amen. I'm excited. Let's turn these heated grips on full blast. There we go. See the diamonds? Now I do wish this thing had a heated seat. Kind of bummed out about that. One of the complaints you've heard about these bikes is that you drag peg pretty easily, and you just got to tweak your riding style a little bit. Yeah, if you're jumping off your sport bike and you're used to getting really low, and then you jump on something like this, you just gotta get used to be a little more of a dynamic rider, and they used to jumping on different bikes and knowing how low you can go. I personally don't like. I drag peg a lot, but I try to. On a cruiser bike, I try not to because I don't want to have to replace my pegs. Those heated grips are already warming up. Now, I know what some of you guys might be thinking. Some of you guys might be like, 91 horsepower, 17 foot-pounds of torque. Not that impressive. Well,
I don't know what you're comparing it to. Maybe a sport bike horsepower numbers, but one, sport bikes don't have that much torque. It's mainly horsepower. So the cruiser bike is going to be more torque than horsepower. So let's compare it to something that's a little more comparable. Let's compare it to a Harley Davidson CVO bike. They're top of the line. They're their most powerful motorcycle that you could buy off the showroom floor, and that'd be a 117 engine. I think it's like a 2150 cc or something. It's a pretty big engine. That is 93 horsepower, and this one's 91. That's 127. The CVO is 127 foot-pounds of torque. This one's like what, 114, 117. It's very, very comparable to the top of the line, most expensive. We're talking $40-something thousand Harley Davidson. So to get this much power out of a bike, and I think this bike spec'd out this way is somewhere between like 22 or 25,000 bucks. That's not bad. And this thing moves. Like, this thing's a blast to drive. I really love that boxer engine. It feels light. It really is a light feeling bike. The clutch is hydraulic, which, you know, you have very good feel of the clutch, but considering how big that clutch is, you don't feel it. I mean, this is, you could have a, honestly, the clutch on this is probably lighter than the clutch on the BMW 310. Just because I don't think that's hydraulic. Hydraulic is normally something that they reserve for their top of the line motorcycles. Roll, let's go to full blown rock mode. Rock mode. It's fun, you know. It's got that, they talk about the Harley rumble, and any two-cylinder motorcycle is going to have some vibration. You know, you got to get higher up in the cylinders to really smooth that out. But these boxer engines, it's a very unique feeling. Anyone who's ever ridden one knows. I like it. They talk about that boxer engine rumble too. Wow. I love the ergonomics of it. I don't normally, you know, unless I'm on a long trip, I'm kicking my feet up. But this is, with my feet being down like this is where I'm most comfortable and where I can ride the longest. I'm not stretching out. It's not putting any extra strain on my back. So I feel especially comfortable on a motorcycle like this. Now, it's freezing cold outside. It's probably in the 20s. So we're not going to get the best traction, but let's see what this thing can do on this real life 0 to 60. There. All right, now I'm not going to lie, I was sandbagging. I was definitely holding back. I didn't even hit full throttle. That got there pretty quick. I could definitely tighten that up if I got a couple more runs, and we can do this in the when it's nice and warm outside. It's got a nice long wheelbase. It feels incredibly stable. Now you can get a lot of different configurations. I like that bobber seat. I think it looks really cool. You can also get a windshield for the front. You can get saddlebags. So you got a lot of different ways. You can get bigger handlebars. A lot of different ways you can configure this bike. I think that's pretty cool. Guys, that wraps it up. This bike is a lot of fun. We'll see you guys later. Remember, it is not what you're riding, but where you're going. Check out this next video right here.